A decorated Navy SEAL laughed loudly enough for the entire military banquet to hear. His mocking question cut through the room like a blade as he looked at the exhausted, single father standing alone in a plain gray suit. The room erupted with quiet smiles and whispered jokes, while the little girl beside the man lowered her eyes, wishing she could disappear. Then something happened that no one in that hall expected. 4 United States generals walked through the entrance, stopped in perfect unison, raised their hands in crisp military salute, and honored the quiet father as if the entire room suddenly remembered a hero history had almost forgotten. In one breathtaking moment, the laughter vanished, pride turned into shame, and every heart in the room was forced to confront the true meaning of honor. Before this unforgettable story begins, if you believe kindness is stronger than pride, forgiveness is greater than revenge, hope can change lives, and everyone deserves a second chance. Please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us what truly matters. The annual Armed Forces Leadership Appreciation Luncheon was one of the most respected daytime military gatherings in the country. Officers from every branch gathered inside a beautiful conference center filled with flags, polished marble floors, and long tables decorated with simple white flowers. Decorated soldiers exchanged stories while military families proudly celebrated years of sacrifice. Everyone seemed to know someone important. Expensive uniforms displayed rows of ribbons earned across decades of service. It was an event where rank often spoke before character. Near the entrance stood Garrett Holloway, a quiet man in his early 40s wearing a modest charcoal suit that had clearly been pressed with care, but had seen better years. His shoes carried tiny scratches, and his hands showed the roughness of someone who worked long hours. Beside him stood his 9-year-old daughter, Claire, carefully holding his hand. She wore a simple blue dress that had once belonged to her late mother, and although it had been adjusted to fit her, she treasured it because it reminded her of happier days. Garrett had not planned to attend. After losing his wife Eleanor to an aggressive illness 4 years earlier, every day became a balancing act between raising Claire alone and working as a civilian maintenance supervisor at a military rehabilitation center. Money was never abundant. Sleep came in short pieces. Yet he never complained because every sacrifice felt worthwhile whenever. Claire smiled. Most people at the event assumed Garrett was only another civilian guest. Few noticed the small bronze lapel pin he wore. Fewer still recognized its significance. Garrett never explained it because he believed true service should never become a performance. Across the room stood Lieutenant Commander Preston Mercer, an accomplished Navy SEAL admired for his athletic achievements and confident personality. Preston had built a reputation for fearlessness in the field, but success had slowly replaced humility with arrogance. Surrounded by younger officers eager to impress him, he enjoyed being the center of attention. As Garrett quietly searched for his assigned table, Preston noticed the plainly dressed father and his daughter. Mistaking modest clothing for insignificance, he smirked before loudly asking the question that instantly drew dozens of eyes. He wondered aloud what Garrett's rank could possibly be, suggesting that someone dressed so simply surely had not accomplished much in military life. Several officers laughed. Others looked away, uncomfortable but unwilling to challenge someone as respected as Preston. Claire tightened her grip on her father's hand. She had seen adults judge them before because they lived simply, but hearing her father become the target of public ridicule hurt more than she could understand. Garrett simply smiled with quiet dignity. Years of hardship had taught him that wounded pride heals faster than wounded kindness. Rather than answer, he gently encouraged Claire toward their table. The silence that followed seemed to make Preston even more confident. Believing he had won the attention of the room, he continued making lighthearted remarks about uniforms, titles, and accomplishments, unknown to almost everyone present. The event's guest of honor had been delayed because 4 retired generals were arriving together after visiting a nearby veterans rehabilitation hospital. The conference hall doors slowly opened. General Theodore Granger entered first, followed by General Russell Beckett, General Victor Langford, and General Malcolm Pierce. Every conversation stopped immediately, as attendees instinctively stood in respect. The generals exchanged greetings with organizers before. General Granger suddenly froze. His eyes had landed on Garrett. Without hesitation, the four generals changed direction, walked across the crowded ballroom, and stopped directly in front of the quiet father. In perfect synchronization, all four men raised their right hands in formal salute. The room became so silent that the soft clinking of glasses could be heard across the hall. General Granger thanked Garrett for saving hundreds of soldiers whose names history would never know. General Beckett spoke about courage that refused publicity. General Langford called Garrett one of the finest examples of leadership he had ever witnessed. General Pierce quietly admitted that many successful careers, including his own, had been possible because of Garrett's decisions years earlier. Faces around the room turned pale. Preston's confident smile disappeared completely. Nobody understood. Garrett gently lowered the generals' hands and embraced each of them like old friends rather than powerful leaders. Only then did General Granger ask permission to finally tell everyone what Garrett had spent nearly 20 years refusing to discuss. Garrett reluctantly agreed because he realized the story no longer belonged only to him. More than 15 years earlier, Garrett had served in one of the military's most dangerous rescue coordination units. His position was never glamorous. While elite teams carried out missions, Garrett specialized in extracting wounded personnel from impossible situations, often remaining behind until every injured service member had been safely evacuated. During one catastrophic overseas operation, communication collapsed. Multiple units became trapped under relentless enemy fire. Helicopters could not safely land. Several commanders believed the situation was beyond recovery. Garrett refused to abandon the injured. Ignoring repeated warnings, he organized an improvised rescue route through collapsed terrain, coordinating medics, engineers, and transport teams under constant danger. For nearly 16 exhausting hours, he moved from position to position, carrying wounded soldiers, directing evacuations, and refusing medical treatment for himself despite multiple injuries. By the end of the operation, every surviving soldier had been brought home. Among those rescued were 4 officers who would later rise through the ranks to become generals. Garrett himself quietly retired after permanent injuries ended his military career. He accepted no interviews. He refused television appearances. He declined speaking tours. When offered recognition, he simply asked that attention be given instead to families of fallen service members. The generals explained that Garrett's humility had become legendary within certain military circles, though few outside those circles knew his name, because nearly every detail remained classified for years. The ballroom remained completely silent. Preston stared at the floor. For the first time in many years, his confidence had collided with genuine humility. Claire looked up at her father with tears in her eyes. She had always known he worked hard and loved her deeply, but she had never fully understood why strangers occasionally thanked him with such emotion. General Beckett knelt beside Claire and gently told her that her father had spent his life protecting other families so children across the country could continue growing up with their own parents. Claire wrapped both arms around Garrett. She whispered that she had always been proud of him, even before everyone else knew. Garrett smiled through tears. He quietly admitted that being Claire's father was the greatest honor he had ever received. The audience applauded, but it was different now. It was no longer polite applause. It was heartfelt gratitude. One by one, military families approached Garrett. Veterans shook his hand. Young officers thanked him for demonstrating that greatness does not need applause to exist. Finally, Preston walked forward. His face carried none of the confidence from earlier. He admitted that years of praise had slowly convinced him that rank determined a person's worth. Meeting Garrett had exposed how shallow that belief had become. Rather than defending himself, he accepted responsibility for humiliating a man he had never taken the time to know. Garrett looked into Preston's eyes and saw sincere regret instead of wounded pride. He offered his hand. Preston hesitated before accepting it. Garrett reminded him that every soldier eventually faces a battle against ego, and winning that battle often matters more than winning any conflict on the battlefield. Those simple words transformed something inside Preston. Months later, he began volunteering, regularly at the same rehabilitation center where Garrett worked. Instead of introducing himself by rank, He introduced himself by name. Younger officers noticed the change and gradually adopted the same humility. Garrett continued repairing equipment during the day and raising Claire with quiet devotion. Life remained simple. Bills still arrived. Challenges never disappeared. But now Claire understood that true heroes rarely announce themselves. Years later, when Claire graduated from college, 4 elderly generals attended the ceremony. They stood proudly beside Garrett, smiling as the little girl who once feared public embarrassment accepted her diploma with confidence. She later chose a career helping wounded veterans rebuild their lives, inspired by the father whose greatest victories had always been acts of compassion rather than recognition. Before this story comes to a close, take a moment to leave a meaningful comment. Tell us what touched your heart the most. Was it Garrett's humility? Preston's sincere apology? Claire's unwavering love for her father? Or the reminder that true honor is earned through character rather than titles? Garrett never measured people by uniforms, medals, or rank. He measured them by the kindness they showed when nobody was watching. The 4 generals understood that lesson, because they had witnessed it on the darkest day of their military careers. Preston learned it because he had the courage to admit he was wrong. Claire carried it into the future, because her father's greatest legacy was not the lives he saved long ago, but the example he lived every single day. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember, titles may earn respect for a moment, but humility, compassion, and quiet courage earn a place in people's hearts forever.